Hello and welcome to Australia on 99.94 Cricket every day. I'm Melinda Farrell. Joining me, as always, is Bharat Sundaresan, Australia's favourite son. Australia on 99.94 is your new home for your Australian content, and we will be dropping into your podcast feed and everywhere else on YouTube, on the 99.94 app, several times every week. So please rate, review, and subscribe. Get in contact with us on Twitter. We love hearing from you. And thanks for joining Cricket's Conversation. Today, we've got a few things to talk about. We're going to start off, later in the show, we're going to be talking about the series between Australia and England, that second ODI, Stark with the new ball again, which is how it should always be, I think. And we'll hear what Bharat thinks about that. And we'll also be talking about the captaincy conundrum. Very interesting to see Josh Hazlewood come in and captain in the absence of Pat Cummins. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. First of all, how are you, Bharat?
Oh,
Just checking.
thank you. Thank you for asking, Mel. No, I'm doing very well. I was just thinking about you saying we drop on this platform several times a week. This is the first time we're doing it twice in the same week. We are very honest about this. The World Cup was rather busy for us, but yeah, I mean, you were ready to record yesterday itself, the day after we had recorded it. I wanted a break, not from you, of course, not from you, but I just thought, like, we should not. Yeah, we shouldn't set the bar too high,
No, yeah, it's never. Well,
neither
look,
for
what we're
King
doing.
Jared nor for our listeners.
Yeah, we will also be doing probably. I think we'll be doing some extra episodes once we get
Cat
in
to
towards
catch
those.
up, yeah,
Yeah, well, also there's a lot of cricket that's about to come, very
yeah.
focused on Australia as we head into the season. So we'll have a lot to talk about in the coming months as well. But I've actually just come across the road from the MCG, and the weather is just horrendous. It is that typical Melbourne thing where it's not 4 seasons in a day; it's
Mm.
4 seasons every 15 minutes. And the training, I mean, Australia were just in the indoor nets. England, I felt so sorry for them. They were outside in the sunshine, and then 2 minutes later, it was pelting down. Everyone ran inside, and then 2 minutes later, it was sunny and there were no clouds again. So some of them were then running back outside. So horrible lopsided training session going on. But let's give the first bit of major attention, as it should rightly go, to the
Yes.
retirement of Rachael Haynes, uh, current Australian vice captain, but she has captained Australia before as well. It feels like she's been around forever, really. Probably the player who has played through and been part of that previous generation, along with, say, your Elise Perry's, and has seen Australia into this new era. And she has decided to hang up the boots. She's achieved everything. She's won everything. She was there for the Commonwealth Games, so that was kind of another new thing ticked off on her to-do list. And she's now decided to give it away. She's a player, Bharat, I think,
Mm.
as probably been underappreciated by the casual sort of
Yeah.
cricket watcher, if that makes sense. I think anyone who's watched the game a lot knows how valuable she is to the team. But she's kind of been a bit of an unsung hero, I think.
I think it's almost by choice as well, right? Even listening to her talk about her career and her retirement last evening at the North Sydney Oval, you could sense that all that fanfare around her was still slightly. She's slightly uncomfortable with it, and you're right. I mean, she's been around for so long and played such a key role as a senior figure from a very young age, if you think about it, right? In that side is that if you are just an average cricket fan who just dabbles in with a little bit of women's cricket here and there, you'd almost started taking her for granted that, yeah, the name R. Haynes is always there, right? Either at the top of the order or at number three, number four, wherever. It's always there. And without getting very excited about her, without really getting to know how important she was to this dream run that Australian women's cricket has had in the last 10 or so years, especially in the last 5 or so years. And yeah, I mean that's the beauty of a player who, even if she might not mean much to a lot of casual fans of women's cricket. She means more than anything to, or more than the world to those who played with her, more than anything, right? Forget about you and me and you in particular, who's seen a lot of Australian women's cricket over the years. But just the respect she's had in that dressing room, and just some of the stories that are coming out about her, about how fun she was off the field, and just the role she played on the field. Yeah, I mean, just how much respect for Rachel Haynes, and yeah, definitely she'll be missed. Australian women's cricket seems to be on this juggernaut, like where they keep producing these special talents every other day, almost it feels like. But the will that absence of Rachel Haynes will be felt whenever they get onto the field the next time as an international team.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to her a lot over the years, and I've also spoken to people like Matthew Mott, Meg Lanning, and others about her as well. And I think the thing that people probably don't realize about her so much is how heavily Matthew Mott and Meg
Mm,
Lanning relied on her. So when Australia had that exit from the 2017 World Cup, when they were bundled out by Harmanpreet Kaur's magnificent innings, they talked about that, all the time afterwards as their crucible moment, and they went away and they came back and had this meeting, team meeting and camp in Brisbane, and that was when the real rebuild came, and there was a lot of talk about the accountability and what they were doing. She was a huge driver of the change that happened
mm,
within that, and I think also she used to take the barometer of the team and be a really good sort of filter,
yeah.
in giving Matthew Mott information that he needed, because she's an incredibly, not just an incredibly astute cricket person, she's very mature,
Mm,
and very, I think, really in tune with how other people are, very empathetic. So Matthew Mott relied on her heavily to sort of gauge where the team was at and what they were doing. And then Meg Lanning could more just focus on the crickety side of stuff and
yeah.
the tactical stuff, all of that sort of thing. But Rachel Haynes was also very important in, being someone for her to feed off as well. So that's the extent of her importance in that team. I think she was arguably as important as Meg Lanning, as far as that team's transfer, and
Yeah.
Matthew Mott in that team's transformation. So her loss will be absolutely
Yeah.
huge. I think also part of the reason that she's maybe underappreciated is that we're now in an age where, I mentioned Harmanpreet Kaur, but even in Australian cricket, you look at some of the big hitters we have
Yeah.
in the game, like Elisa Healy and Beth Mooney, the big power hitters,
Yeah.
and you don't always associate her with that. But in that game, there's semi-finals, she's played some huge roles in World Cups, and in the T20 World Cup in Australia a couple of years ago, they were 3 for 10 against Sri Lanka
Mm,
and would have been knocked out. She came in and got, I think, 60 off 40 odd in that game, and so she could actually score very
really
quickly
good. Yeah.
when needed, and she did the same sort of thing in the Caribbean a couple of years earlier as well, where semi-finals in the West Indies, she helped really get them through there. So she's always been that person. It hasn't been the big standout final
Mm,
performance. It's been in
yeah.
semi-finals, it gets them there, and that
Yeah. Yeah.
probably sums her up, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and we've seen players like that in team sport for over the years, right? In men's sport, women's sport, cricket, non-cricket as well. And yeah, and for me, Rachel Haynes always stood for stability. Like when you saw
Mm,
Rachel Haynes out there, you knew, Australia was safe. There was that she was the safety blanket to this team, and I think that's why they'll miss her even more. Like I remember interviewing Beth Mooney a couple of years ago and about how she doesn't really like the limelight, and how she was getting used to it. Or if you think about Rachel Haynes, she comes in at a time when women's cricket is growing in popularity in Australia. It hasn't reached the peak that it has now. So for her to just kind of blend in who she was and the role she played, like you said, such a senior figure, and then keep producing those kind of performances, which kind of always went under the radar because she wasn't. Not that Alicia Healy and Elise Perry are flashy, but it's just the kind of cricket they play just stands out a lot more, even Beth Mooney for that matter. So, yeah, I mean, a great career and like so good to see it get the right amount of coverage that it deserves.
Yes, actually, that stood out to me as well. Wonderful to see that happening because you probably wouldn't have seen that in years past. So certainly, I hope that the world of cricket doesn't lose her completely because she's absolutely a great star of the game. Anyway, we've got a lot more to talk about, and we are trying to be better at being snappy because because we have the habit of just talking for hours and hours, which we can do. But we're going to take, yeah, not he's pointing at me like it's me and not him. Please. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more in a moment.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
Okay, well, as I said earlier, I'm in Melbourne. The weather's dreadful. Be interesting to see how many people rock up to this game because it's been hard to put this series into context so soon after a World Cup and with a one-day World Cup still 11 months away. And it's now a dead rubber because Australia have taken a 2-0 lead with another pretty comfortable victory
Mm,
in terms of, the run rate was never a problem. It was just the fact England kept losing wickets in the end. But there are a couple of things that were interesting about that second ODI. Mitch Starc is missing out on this third ODI in Melbourne. He's stayed back in Sydney, and Riley Meredith has come
mm,
into the squad. Uh, but he was back with a new ball, Bharat. And
mm.
it was like watching, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers did make movies with other people, okay?
Yeah.
But when they put on their shoes and they were gliding across the floor, it's like, why would you ever really want to separate Fred and Ginger? And for me, Mitch Stark is Fred and the new ball is Ginger. They should and Swing Time, one of the best Fred and Ginger movies, and Swing Time, Mitchell Stark. It's perfect. Fred and Ginger, Mitchell Stark, new ball. Why would you ever move away from that?
Well, that's for the old school romantics out there. Yeah. Yeah, I always, by the way, this has nothing to do with Mitchell Stark. Growing up, I was always confused between Fred Astaire and Frank Sinatra. I don't know why. Look, I grew up in Mumbai, yeah, so I used to just watch a bit of Fred Astaire here and there on what we used to call it. There was a channel. So Cartoon Network would become Turner Classic Movies, and
Mm.
invariably they would show all these movies. I obviously watched a lot of cartoons as a child. And when I wasn't watching wrestling, I was watching Fred Astaire. So I get the reference. So thanks for that. And also, the Australian fans, the Benos, generally sing that song for Mitchell Stark, right? It's Mitchell Stark, the new ball king. And he has been the new ball king for so many years. I think I put this out on Twitter. It's like, you don't split them up as a couple. And you said Fred and Ginger. I can think of, Sylvester Stallone and Rambo, or Sylvester Stallone and Rocky, or Arnold Schwarzenegger and the
Yeah, the
Terminator.
difference is they're the same person.
I know.
One's just a character and one's an actor.
Fine. All right. I just wanted to, speak about my vintage growing up, Mel. Sorry.
Hang on, let's just point out Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers are not my vintage.
I'm
I
just
just
saying.
happen to be a classic movie buff.
That is true. You did tell me a lot about that other famous movie in Pakistan, the one where there's a guy who goes to prison for stealing a piece of bread, and you and Jeff kept singing songs from that. What's that one called?
Les Miserables.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There we were on the streets of Karachi, and you guys couldn't stop talking about Les Miserables. But yeah, or however it's pronounced. But back to Mitchell Stark and the new ball, Love. Yeah, look, we spoke about this during the World Cup as well. He had a strange World Cup where He took the new ball against New Zealand. Finn Allen went after him and pretty much everyone else. Then Australia changed his role and he started coming in the middle overs and would bowl that 1 over in the death. And I remember when I asked him the question in Brisbane, you were there as well. He didn't say it, but you could make out that he wanted the new ball. And then we get to Adelaide and he doesn't even play. So it was
Yeah.
just a strange World Cup for Mitchell Starc. But yeah, I mean, you look at the last two 50-over World Cups, the impact he's had with the new ball, and he has been the new ball king. So no, it was good to see even the ball he bowled in Adelaide to get rid of. Was it Jason Roy, the in swinger that he bowled to
Yes.
get and once again to get rid of?
Milan, the ball that ball that got Milan out was
Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous.
that was just
Like,
Mitchell Starc at his
yeah,
best, right? I mean,
yeah,
that was Fred Astaire just setting the
yes.
stage, the screen on fire. Like that was like Mitchell Starc did.
That was Fred Astaire basically spinning Ginger Rogers around and them leaping over a I don't know, in a gazebo. They do a number in a gazebo, I can tell you that. But that was that moment, like, where he swings her around and she lands perfectly, and it was that moment, was the climax to one of their best scenes, I think.
I'm also more a Ginger Baker guy than Ginger Rogers, but that's all right. That's okay.
But it was interesting him talking about it afterwards as
Yeah,
well, 'cause, the other thing I like about Mitch is that he'll always eh, he'll let you know that he's
yeah,
not happy with it, and he made those comments afterwards that, he'd had a discussion with George Bailey and it would stay there, but he'd made his thoughts known.
yeah.
The thing is, so reading, I know you're a Crick Buzz man, but I did note that Cricinfo did put that stat out about sorry B, but just about how many,
Yeah, yeah,
how often that he's taken more
yeah,
wickets in the first over in ODIs than any other bowler in the past 10 years. And he's basically in ODI cricket, he does what Shaheen Shah Afridi does so well in T20 cricket, right?
yeah,
It's that threat straight up, and that just really knocked England, set them back. That first over that he bowled was
yeah.
absolutely brilliant. And it's hard. So he has those. He's one of those bowlers, isn't he? Where sometimes he'll have those days when people do go after him, and it
Mm,
just doesn't really happen. But he also does things that so few bowlers can do like that,
mm,
in with the new ball early on, and especially this new ball, this new white kookaburra that's actually swinging a little bit more, at the moment. So, yeah, it's a strange one. Also thought it was interesting how he was talking a lot about, the IPL and what's he supposed to do? He loves Test cricket. He wants to prioritize Test cricket, but then when he does get into a white ball side, and then if he's not used the right way, and there's people are saying, oh, maybe he should go and play in the IPL because then, he might be better, for want of another word, at T20 strategically bowling. But I don't know. I sort of sympathise with him a bit in that. How do you manage your career?
yeah, yeah,
And when you do care about Test cricket, you want to. He's obviously a stupendous white ball talent,
yeah.
and should be used by Australia, but he can't flog himself into the ground playing every series.
Oh no, I mean I think in the modern era of cricket, there are no bad choices if you're a player. Till the time you stay accountable for it and you own up to it. And Mitchell Stark at every given point has explained why he doesn't go and play in the IPL. And fair on him, like if he wants more family time, nobody can hold that against him. Until the time the Australian selectors are not focusing or focusing on his performances in the IPL or the fact that he doesn't play in the IPL when it comes to picking him for white ball sides, how does it even matter, right? Like, if he continues, I can't see an Australian team playing the 50 over World Cup next year in India without Mitchell Starc.
No.
And at that point, he's closer to his mid 30s, you would think. 50 over cricket might, like David Warner said the other day, he might not want to play 50 over cricket. So, no, I think it's only fair. And we touched upon this last week, right? Like how David Warner has gone from saying that he might retire from Test cricket first 2 years ago to, oh no, from one day cricket, T20 cricket first 2 years ago to now 2 years on or 3 years on saying he might give up Test cricket first. So I think it's a moving feast, as they say in Australia. See, I got it right this time. I don't know
As
what I used to
opposed to
call
the
it.
traveling feast, was it?
Traveling feast, of course. Yeah, that's just an Indian wedding. And yeah, and Mitchell Starc with the new ball is like Fred Astaire and Ginger, not Baker, Ginger Rogers selling out theaters first day, first show with
Yeah.
every movie they made. If they made
That's
movies together. Yeah.
that's good. I'm going to make you watch some Fred Astaire and Ginger
Oh, for
Rogers
sure.
clips, right? I will. I'll also, because I know you offer also getting mixed up with Gene Kelly from Singing in the Rain, so I
That is
might
true.
make you watch some of those. All right, we're going to take another short break and come back, and we're going to discuss a bit more about that ODI and the
Hmm.
captaincy, which threw everyone a little curveball. We'll be back in a moment.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
Welcome back to Australia on 99.94. Now, Bharat, I think all of us had,
Hmm.
we all raised our eyebrows a little bit when Pat Cummins sat out. And there's a vice captain in Steve Smith's done a fair bit of
Yep.
vice captaincy. Alex Carey has had his share of leadership moments in that team. But out came Pat Cummins and in came Josh Hazlewood for the first time. I can't recall him ever captaining before. I was actually asking the New South Wales guys. He's not really captained at that level. They were estimating that the last time he captained was probably, if he ever has,
Yeah.
was as a kid.
Mhm.
Um, so it was a very interesting choice. I have my theories on why they went that way. I'd like to hear yours.
I mean, he was, if you remember, co-vice captain with Travis
Yes.
Head for a while in Test cricket. So, I mean, who knows what would have happened if Tim Payne had gotten injured at that point? Like, which one of those two would have been captain? We would never know. But yeah, I took me by surprise for sure when I read that it's going to be Josh Hazlewood. And my theory, I've stuck to this theory from the day Pat Cummins was named as one-day captain. And with the news today about how Australia have changed a bit of their constitution in
Code
terms
of
of
conduct.
code of conduct. Like yeah, which isn't it part of the constitution? I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. That just sounds
It just sound very like yeah.
constitutional right to captain Australia.
I think it is a constitutional right. I mean, as part of the Cricket Australia Constitution, we'll have to get Dan Breddick on the show to know exactly what it's called. But yeah, the whole code of conduct thing has been changed, where some people can challenge sanctions that are placed on him, and it's let's face it, it's all about basically those are just very academic professionals terms that are being used to say that David Warner is open to captain Australia again at some point. And this is what I expected the day Pat Cummins was named as one-day captain, and just listening to him talk about how he's not going to play every game. And he plays one game, and he's, like he had said, he doesn't play the second game. So he captains Australia in one ODI, and the second ODI they bring Josh Hazlewood in, which surprised me. I mean, look, they could have gone to Alex Carey, who did captain them in the Caribbean last year,
Mhm.
but for me, it's still everything points at eventually David Warner taking over, and I I'm sticking my neck out here. I have a feeling David Warner will be Australia captain at the next 50 over World Cup. That's been my theory all along, and I don't see anything that has happened between then, about a month ago, when Cummins was named ODI captain, and now that changes my opinion. If anything, it just strengthens my opinion. And so Hazelwood is more like obviously just uh, a stand-in captain. And it's great. I mean, Bumrah, Cummins, and Hazelwood captaining their countries in the same year is quite something. I generally don't take credit for stuff that I put on Twitter, but I did say sometime last year about how Cummins and Bumrah, imagine if they are captaining against each other in a test match, and we're getting closer and closer to
Mhm.
that reality. I didn't expect it to happen 3-4 months from when I tweeted that out, but yeah, maybe I knew
Uh,
something that others did not. But yeah, I
Fantastic.
really do think that's my theory, Mel. I would love to listen to yours.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I basically think that it's them getting Josh Hazlewood to do it, although it would have made more sense to me if it had been Alex Carey, to be
Yeah.
honest. But maybe it's like a bit of a reward for Josh Hazlewood. I don't know. Maybe it's just that the fast bowling cartel is
Yes.
all powerful now in Australia. We'll see Starkey captaining sometime down the
Who
track.
knows? Yeah.
I asked Adam Zampa actually. I was like, well, when do you get a when do you get a go, or is it just the fast bowlers? But I think he'd very much like to. But I think that this is the caution approach. I
Yeah.
do think that's the biggest hindrance to Dave Warner being captain will be the caution about public opinion,
Yes, of course. Yeah.
because we know, and we touched on this the other day, and the funny thing is, it was just neither of us had Josh Hazlewood as captain on our bingo card. We went through almost every other future option, but we didn't have that one. In a way, it's a little bit of kicking the can down the road, especially in Australia during the summer. So it would be a big story if Dave Warner ended up captaining Australia in Australia. I think would be the biggest
Mm,
story, and it would be a matter of I think if they can just kind of taking the temperature of the Australian public by him doing it. And I don't know what that would be. I do know that I've spoken to a lot of people who have some very strong
of
opinions,
course.
just in the public generally, and
Yeah, yeah,
people in
yeah.
the public have as they're more important in this conversation than you and I are,
Yeah, yeah,
right? It's a how no, who cares what we think in terms of people buying tickets and merchandise and turning on TVs. There's nothing to do with us. It's those people who've got those opinions on whether or not they like the Australian team or not. And it's been through a bit of a rough year, going back to Tim Paine's exit, Justin Langer's exit,
yeah.
all the other stuff that's happened with, Pat Cummins and Alinta and everything else. So it does relate back to what I said the other day about the fragility of the Australian men's team post Sandpaper Gate and taking what the public will accept,
Yeah.
rightly or wrongly. It's not up to us to judge that. It's just what they feel. It'll be interesting then if it does come true and your prediction on Warner captaining the next 50 over World Cup, that's probably an easier sell than a World Cup at home than say if he'd captained Australia in this T20 World Cup. I
Yeah.
think that would, if they'd managed to get the code of conduct change through before the World Cup, that would have been quite interesting to me. I just, yeah, I just feel like if Pat Cummins can be set upon by a load of people and he's the golden child of Australian cricket, can do no wrong. You can imagine what would happen if Warner was captain of the Australian team and they had a bad performance. I think there'd be quite a few people ready to do that as well. So, and I'm not making any judgments on that. I'm just trying to get a sense of where the public's at, because I've had quite a few interesting conversations in recent time with just general fans, and the yeah, they've got some work to do, and this is it. I don't think any of us knew just what might be the long term effects of Sandpaper Gate were, and everything that built up to Sandpaper Gate. I think this goes back to Michael Clark and Get Ready for a Broken effing arm, and you know, scared eyes and brain fake, all of those things. It's all collapsed. We're still seeing how fragile that is, and, I just don't know. I think that Josh Hazlewood coming in is a way of just pushing it in the background for now. And I think they'll keep making safe choices during the Australian summer unless they decide to test it with Warner at some stage. But be pretty tough, I think, here. I think they'll be very cautious about that.
No, they don't have to worry about that at all, considering after this ODI, there are just 5 test matches. That's the only
Yeah.
excuse me. Um, I don't think they have to worry about that at all, because if you look at the home summer after this ODI in Melbourne, which could well be washed out according to what you're saying, which David Warner will not be captaining, they have just the 5 test matches, 2 against West Indies and 3 against South Africa, which if Pat Cummins doesn't captain, anyway, Steve Smith's there as vice captain, and we did see him captain Australia in that Adelaide
Yeah,
Test last
yeah,
year.
but just on that point, can you imagine if Pat Cummins has to miss one of the South African tests, and then Steve Smith will be captain? Like
Exactly.
it all sort of happened really suddenly when he did it in the Ashes.
Yeah.
But that would be become quite a big story if he ended up captaining against South Africa in the first series that their test series they played since Sandpaper Gate.
Yeah, but almost you get a feeling that um, a lot of the Australian public that you spoke about have always been more sympathetic towards Steve Smith than David Warner. I mean, right, like whoever you speak to, and I've spoken to a lot of people, or people have come and spoken to me about how their interest in cricket waned after Sandpaper Gate,
Mm.
and for a lot of people, just the average fans who watch cricket occasionally, like David Warner became that figure of. Or like the face of whatever happened in Cape Town. With Steve Smith, it almost feels like he got forgiven a lot sooner for a variety of reasons, I guess. But yeah, just going back to Warner, so those 5 test matches, you won't expect him to captain there. He plays a handful of BBL games. Maybe they could try it out there. But between now and that 50-over World Cup, Australia don't play at home.
Mm.
So he could easily just fit in as captain, play the 50-over World Cup, retire from one-day cricket, and Australia never has to see David Warner captain Australia in Australia. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how the schedule is. So in a way, this comes at a great time for Australia. Anyway, I don't think they look at him as a Test captain, right? Like you
No.
have Pat Cummins
Mm.
now and Steve Smith, who Pat Cummins handpicked as his vice captain, if you remember. And then moving forward, who knows? And David Warner's anyway said he could well be contemplating retirement from Test cricket. So unless he becomes a late choice as their T20 captain, there's no reason for Cricket Australia to worry about even having David Warner as captain on home soil. So it will be really interesting to see how it plays out. But if they were to go in that direction, I think this could well be the best time for them to do that.
Well, we shall see. Do know that Bharat is a bit of a Bharatradamus.
Mm,
As I just came up with that then.
that sounds very good.
I'm kind of happy with that. No, we'll wrap it up there. We'll be back again after the third ODI to maybe look at the wash up there. We're going to start to look forward to the rest of the summer as well. There's a lot coming up. But thanks for listening to Australia on 99.94, where we speak cricket every day. Well, not like just us, there's lots of other people as well, obviously. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcasts. You can download the 99.94 app and follow us on Twitter at BeastieBoy07 and at Melinda Farrell. I don't know why I said it like that. Never miss out. Join our 24/7 conversation on social media and follow us at 9994DM. Cricket every day, your way.